Travis Walton, a 22-year-old forestry worker, was known as a regular, hard-working man. Every day he joined a crew of 7 men under the leadership of Mike Rogers, a seasoned contractor. This group of laborers, including Alan Dallas, John Goulet, Steve Pierce, Ken Peterson, and Dwayne Smith, were not just co-workers, but also friends. They shared a camaraderie built on countless days spent working together, their bonds solidified by the common purpose of their work and the solitude of their forest surroundings. In the heart of the sprawling Apache Sitgreaves National Forest, Walton and his crew undertook the vital yet unsung work of forest maintenance. These weren't your stereotypical lumberjacks, mindlessly felling trees. Their work was more delicate, a combination of skill, endurance, and respect for nature. They were engaged in thinning operations, their principal task to clear the forest undergrowth, a tangle of shrubs, saplings, and deadwood. This process is essential for the health of the forest, preventing the spread of wildfires and promoting the growth of mature, healthy trees by reducing competition for nutrients and sunlight. Each day, armed with chainsaws, axes, and their sheer resolve, the crew would face the raw, untamed wilderness. The deafening roar of chainsaws would cut through the stillness of the forest as they methodically cleared section after section. The work was physically demanding, requiring a combination of strength, agility, and precision. One wrong move with a chainsaw could lead to serious injury, so despite the camaraderie, there was always a sense of alertness, a respectful awareness of the dangers their work entailed. When their workday ended, they'd leave behind a safer, healthier forest, the silent testimonial of their day's labor. Yet despite the exhaustion, there was a sense of accomplishment, an honest satisfaction that comes from hard physical labor and the visible fruits of their efforts. It was grueling, often monotonous, but it was honest work that paid the bills and kept them fit. On the afternoon of November 5th, their camaraderie and their ordinary lives would face an extraordinary test. As we delve into the events of that night, remember, these were regular men, their lives rooted in the physical, tangible world. They had little reason to spin tall tales or invite unnecessary drama. Yet what they reported on that fateful night would hurl them into the epicenter of one of the most debated UFO incidents in history. After a long day of labor in the wilderness, Walton and his crew piled into their work truck, ready for the drive home. The forest around them was shifting into its nocturnal guise. The towering pines, once a vibrant green under the harsh sun, now took on a more muted palette under the soft, fading light. As they navigated the rough, unpaved roads, their headlights cut through the encroaching darkness, casting long, dancing shadows among the trees. The forest had an untouched, serene quality to it, a living testament to nature's grandeur. The scent of pine and damp earth hung in the air, a signature fragrance of the deep woods. It was a scene of tranquility and solitude, miles away from the nearest human habitation. Their drive home was always an experience, a winding path through an ever-changing tableau of nature. The distant hooting of an owl or the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush provided a gentle soundtrack to their journey. The canopy overhead appeared as a patchwork of stars and silhouettes against the slowly darkening sky. As dusk fell and they navigated the rough forest tracks, a strange glow seeped through the trees, attracting their attention. They drove towards it, curiosity piquing, expecting perhaps a forest fire or some sort of man-made light source. As they cleared a thick stand of trees, they were greeted with an unearthly sight that would forever sear itself into their collective memory. Hovering in the air was a large, luminous, disc-shaped object, radiating a mesmerizing, almost hypnotic light into the surrounding darkness. The sight was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. None of them could offer a rational explanation for what they were seeing. In a seemingly impulsive act, Walton, driven by a mix of curiosity and bravado, left the safety of the vehicle to approach the hovering craft. His friends watched on, a mix of fascination and dread seizing them as Walton advanced towards the unknown. Walton later described the craft as smooth and mirror-like, emitting strange, disconcerting sounds that both alarmed and enticed him. The turning point came when a blue-green beam emitted from the craft, striking Walton. His body stiffened and jerked backward, as if hit by a powerful force, before collapsing onto the ground, motionless. Panic erupted among the remaining crew members who, in the face of such a terrifying spectacle, made the decision to flee, leaving their friend behind. These men, rugged and grounded by their daily communion with nature, had suddenly found themselves in a situation that defied all logic and reason. They grappled with their instincts to rescue their fallen companion and their primal urge to escape from an unexplainable threat. In the ensuing chaos and confusion, they raced away from the site, leaving Walton in the eerie glow of the unidentified object. But their flight was short-lived, guilt and concern overcoming their initial terror. They soon turned the truck around, heading back to face the unknown. Returning to the scene, they found Walton gone. The luminous craft vanished. The forest plunged back into its natural nocturnal state. The only traces of the encounter were their vivid memories and a palpable sense of fear and confusion. This event, this encounter with the inexplicable, marks the beginning of the Travis Walton UFO case, a mystery that would only deepen in the coming days, setting off a series of investigations, speculations, and heated debates. In the wake of Walton's sudden disappearance, a sense of shock and disbelief took hold of his crewmates. Left with no other option, they made the uneasy drive back to town, tasked with delivering news that would sound unbelievable to even the most imaginative mind. Upon their return, they were met with skepticism from the local authorities. Their outlandish tale of a UFO and a beam of light was hard to digest, prompting suspicions about their involvement in Walton's disappearance. Despite the palpable tension, the men maintained their story, adamant about what they had witnessed. Snowflake, Arizona, is a small, close-knit community, tucked away amidst the natural splendor of the American Southwest. It's a place where everyone knows everyone, where the rhythm of life is dictated more by the changing seasons than by the rush of modern living. When news of Walton's bizarre disappearance reached the townsfolk, it sent shockwaves through the community. The story of a UFO encounter, so alien to their daily life, was met initially with disbelief and skepticism. After all, such tales seem more suited to late-night radio shows or tabloid papers, not the reality of their small, rural town. Yet, as the search for Walton continued without a trace, the reality of his disappearance began to sink in. Prompted by the seriousness of a missing persons case, a search was launched in the early hours of November 6th. Experienced search and rescue teams, accompanied by Walton's disbelieving co-workers, ventured into the woods, hoping to find some trace of Walton or the strange craft they had described. Over the next few days, the forest was combed thoroughly, every rustling leaf, every snap of a twig, raising hope, only to dash it. No trace of Walton, nor any evidence of a UFO landing site was found. Meanwhile, the town of Snowflake buzzed with rumors and speculation. A cloud of uncertainty hung over the close-knit community as people grappled with the seemingly impossible story relayed by the logging crew. Walton's disappearance became the talk of the town, seeping into every conversation, every thought. The normalcy of their rural life had been disrupted, replaced with a disconcerting sense of fear and unease. Days turned into nights, and nights into days, with no sign of Walton. As the search wore on with no leads, frustration and desperation began to creep in. But just when all hope seemed lost, just when theories about Walton's fate grew wilder, Walton re-emerged, as suddenly and unexpectedly as he had vanished. His return marked a new chapter in the saga, bringing with it an extraordinary tale that would add fuel to the speculative fires of ufologists and skeptics alike. Five days after Walton's sudden disappearance, a weary community was stirred awake by an unexpected phone call. It was Travis Walton, sounding distressed and disoriented, pleading for help from a location he couldn't immediately identify. The news sent a jolt through Snowflake. Walton's brother rushed to the designated location, a phone booth on the outskirts of a nearby town. There, shivering from cold and visibly shaken, was Travis Walton. His reappearance, as baffling as his initial disappearance, sparked an immediate wave of relief throughout the town. But it was short-lived, quickly overtaken by a tide of looming questions. Walton appeared physically unharmed, albeit weak and disoriented, but his story of what occurred during his missing days was anything but ordinary. Travis claimed that he woke up in a room that bore an unsettling resemblance to a hospital recovery room, but devoid of the reassuring, familiar touches of human design. He described the room as a sterile, metallic environment. The walls, ceiling, and floor were smooth and seamless, appearing to be made from a material resembling brushed stainless steel. The space was eerily silent, absent of the typical sounds you'd expect in a hospital. No distant conversations, no beeping of medical monitors, no reassuring rustle of medical staff. The room was filled with a soft, diffuse light, but Walton couldn't locate a discernible source. It wasn't bright like a surgical room, but it wasn't dim either. Adding to the clinical feel, Walton recounted a variety of strange, unfamiliar instruments nearby. Unlike the surgical tools we're accustomed to, these instruments were oddly shaped, with sleek designs and no immediately discernible purpose. The fear of their potential use added a threatening undertone to the already unsettling environment. He also noted a distinctive, unpleasant odor permeating the room, sharp and chemical-like, a far cry from the antiseptic cleanliness of a typical medical facility. This scent only heightened his sense of unease, the alien aroma serving as a constant reminder that he was far from anything familiar. As Walton lay in the stark, metallic room, his senses heightened by fear and confusion, he came face to face with beings that were far from human. This first encounter is a cornerstone of Walton's account, an encounter that plunges his narrative deep into the realm of the extraordinary. According to Walton, these beings stood a little over 5 feet tall, their stature reminiscent of an average human, but the similarities ended there. Their bodies were slender, their limbs disproportionately long and thin compared to a human frame. They moved with a fluid grace, a motion that seemed unnervingly calculated and precise. Their heads were larger in proportion to their bodies than a human's, a detail that lent an eerie, childlike quality to their appearance. They were devoid of hair, their heads smoothly rounded, the skin appearing ashen and unnaturally smooth. Yet it was their faces that truly unsettled Walton. Their features were faint and underdeveloped. Their noses were small and flat, their mouths little more than small, straight slits, devoid of lips or expression. They lacked the facial hair that characterizes human adulthood. No eyebrows, no lashes, no beard or stubble. Their faces were as smooth and unblemished as a porcelain doll's. But it was their eyes that truly captured Walton's attention and cemented his fear. The eyes were large and glossy, occupying a significant portion of their face. They were a profound brown, almost black, lacking the white sclera that human eyes possess. These eyes were mesmerizing, deeply intelligent, yet chilling in their emotionless gaze. Despite their humanoid form, these beings were fundamentally alien to Walton, a departure from everything he had known and understood. Encountering these beings marked a pivotal moment in Walton's alleged abduction, his interactions with them forever etching this incident in the annals of UFO encounters. Beyond the initial encounter with the beings in the metallic room, Walton's account takes another remarkable turn. He described being led by these beings into a large domed room. There, he encountered a different set of humanoid figures, ones that were strikingly more human-like in appearance. Unlike the previous beings, these new figures bore a strong resemblance to humans. They were taller, about the height of an average adult human. Their bodies were proportionate, devoid of the previous being's thin, elongated limbs. They moved in a manner familiar to Walton, their motions not as fluidly precise, but more akin to the movements of ordinary people. These new figures were dressed in blue uniforms, a detail that injected an oddly mundane touch into Walton's surreal experience. The uniforms were like jumpsuits, form-fitting but not tight. A deep, vibrant blue that seemed almost out of place in the otherwise stark, metallic environment. Their heads were appropriately proportioned to their bodies, not large or rounded like the earlier beings, but similar to a human's. They had a full head of hair, further emphasizing their human-like appearance. The faces of these figures were expressively human. They had well-defined, familiar features, noses, mouths, and ears that didn't appear much different from a human's. Their skin was smooth, but not unnaturally so, showing a range of complexion shades similar to those seen in human populations. Their eyes, however, were the most distinguishing feature. These figures had eyes that Walton could recognize, eyes with white sclera, irises, and pupils. Their gaze was not the cold, emotionless stare he encountered earlier. Instead, these eyes had a sense of familiarity, a quality that, despite the unusual circumstances, provided Walton a small measure of comfort. Despite their human-like appearance, these figures remained silent, their communication limited to gestures and guiding touches. They never spoke a word, adding to the enigma surrounding them. Communication, as we understand it, relies heavily on language. Words spoken and heard, written and read. It's a bridge that connects minds, allows us to express our thoughts, emotions, and intentions. But in Walton's extraordinary account, communication took an entirely different form. Walton reported no spoken words, no discernible language, no sounds that could be interpreted as speech. Instead, these beings communicated non-verbally, using a mix of direct physical guidance and what Walton interpreted as telepathy. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of their communication was the sense of understanding Walton felt, despite the absence of spoken words. He described feeling an impression of what they wanted or intended, akin to an idea being placed directly in his mind. Upon regaining consciousness in the sterile metallic room, he found himself on a sort of operating table. The less human-like entities began what Walton interpreted as an examination or procedure. They used the strange, unfamiliar instruments Walton had noticed earlier, though he could discern neither their exact purpose nor the nature of the examination. Overwhelmed by fear and confusion, Walton made a desperate attempt to resist, to fend off the beings. However, his efforts seemed to have little impact, leaving him feeling powerless and intensifying his sense of claustrophobia and fear. His experience took an even stranger turn when he was led into a large, domed room. Here, he was greeted by the sight of a starlit sky, the ceiling giving the impression of an endless expanse of space. He noted a high-backed chair positioned in the middle of the room, which, upon closer inspection, was surrounded by an array of controls and screens. At one point, one of the human-like beings placed a mask-like apparatus over Walton's face. He lost consciousness soon after, his memory going blank. Walton's next memory is of waking up on a cold pavement in Arizona, disoriented and weak, the UFO hovering above him before swiftly disappearing into the night. His ordeal aboard the alleged craft was over, but the lasting effects of this bewildering encounter were only beginning to unfold.
He spent 5 days on the UFO, he thinks. Now, there is some small time loss in there, but for all intent and purposes, he spent 5 days on there. He did come in contact with some beings that are human-like, but they weren't human.
Obviously, Dwayne, you know your own brother probably better than anybody else. Do you believe the story?
I've never seen him play a practical joke in his adult life.
Snowflake was ill-prepared for the media onslaught that would follow Travis Walton's return. Usually a place where days rolled by with the predictable rhythm of small-town life, it suddenly found itself under the glaring spotlight of national attention. News of Walton's reappearance and his sensational account of an alien abduction spread like wildfire, turning this humble town into an instant media hotspot. Journalists and camera crews descended upon Snowflake in droves, transforming its tranquil main streets into a bustling epicenter of breaking news. Local diners, usually filled with the gentle hum of everyday conversations, now hosted intense interviews. Walton's co-workers, friends, and family found themselves thrust into the limelight, their views sought after, their every word analyzed. Their faces, alongside Walton's, were splashed across newspapers and television screens from coast to coast. Television news trucks, bearing logos of networks local and national, became a common sight. Satellite dishes pointed skyward, beaming the latest updates on the Walton case to curious viewers nationwide. News anchors delivered dramatic accounts of the event against the backdrop of the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest, painting a picture of mystery and intrigue for their captivated audiences. Snowflake's residents watched as their peaceful town was thrust into a frenzy of speculation and debate. Many were uneasy about this unexpected invasion of their privacy, while others found the spectacle bewildering, even exciting. Through it all, Travis Walton remained at the eye of the storm, his story a constant source of fascination, skepticism, and debate. His every move was watched, his every word dissected. The quiet logger from Snowflake had become an overnight sensation, his life irrevocably altered by his inexplicable experience. In the wake of Walton's account and amid mounting skepticism, professional investigators were brought in to probe deeper into the case. Their task was daunting: to assess the veracity of one of the most sensational and controversial UFO encounters in history. First on their list was the polygraph test. Walton and his crewmates willingly participated, subjected to a series of questions meant to ascertain the truthfulness of their claims. The results were intriguing, to say the least. Walton and his crew, including Mike Rogers, all passed their polygraph tests, seemingly validating their accounts of the strange event. But the skepticism did not fade. Critics pointed out that polygraph tests, while useful, are not foolproof. They measure physiological responses to stress, which can vary greatly among individuals and can be influenced by various factors. In essence, passing a polygraph test does not definitively prove honesty, just as failing one does not confirm deceit. Next came the use of hypnosis, a technique sometimes used in abduction cases to recover blocked or repressed memories. Under hypnosis, Walton reiterated his account of the abduction with minor variations, but nothing substantial enough to discredit his original tale. However, critics again were not swayed, arguing that hypnosis is prone to suggestive memory creation, especially in individuals with strong beliefs or expectations. The final piece of the investigative puzzle was the psychological evaluation. Walton was deemed psychologically typical with no signs of mental illness that could have triggered hallucinations or delusions. Yet skeptics remained, arguing that a clean psychological bill doesn't necessarily rule out fabrication. As with any claim of the extraordinary, Walton's story was met with a considerable wave of skepticism. Critics ranged from local folks who found the tale too far-fetched, to prominent scientists and UFO researchers who questioned the lack of hard, empirical evidence. Critics pointed to the narrative's alignment with the tropes of popular science fiction. The descriptions of the craft, the humanoid aliens, the operating tables, and the strange instruments bore a striking resemblance to the portrayals of alien encounters in movies and books. They argued that Walton could have been influenced by these, consciously or subconsciously, while crafting his tale. The convenient lapses in Walton's memory were another point of contention. Skeptics found it suspicious that he could recall some aspects of the experience in great detail, while others remained hazy or entirely forgotten. They argued that these gaps could be convenient ways of avoiding questions that Walton could not answer convincingly. Walton's sudden reappearance was also scrutinized. Critics questioned why an allegedly advanced alien civilization would return Walton relatively unharmed and so close to his original location. Why, they asked, would extraterrestrial beings allow him to recall his experience at all? Another focal point of skepticism towards Walton's story centered around his family's pre-existing interest in UFOs. Prior to the 1975 incident, the Walton family had reportedly shown a significant interest in the topic of UFOs and extraterrestrial life, an interest that critics argued could provide a potential motive for fabricating such a sensational story. Walton's brother Dwayne was particularly fascinated with the UFO phenomena. It was reported that he had an extensive collection of books on the topic and had openly expressed his belief in extraterrestrial visitations long before Travis's alleged abduction. Adding fuel to the skeptical fire, Dwayne Walton was one of the first people Travis called after his reappearance. This, coupled with Dwayne's staunch defense of his brother's story, raised eyebrows among the critics. The Waltons, they suggested, had the motive and the background knowledge to create a compelling and detailed account of an alien abduction. Supporters of Travis's story argued that an interest in UFOs did not necessarily equate to hoaxing a highly intricate and public alien abduction story. They contended that Travis Walton was not seeking fame or fortune, but was instead a victim of an extraordinary event that he struggled to understand and convey. Nevertheless, the burden of proof lay heavily on Walton. In the aftermath of his alleged abduction, Travis Walton's life underwent a profound transformation. His story resonated across the globe, sparking widespread fascination and debate about extraterrestrial life and its possible interactions with humanity. However, this newfound prominence came with a cost. While some were fascinated by Walton's account and eager to believe, others were highly skeptical, if not outright dismissive. He was met with a mixture of adoration, curiosity, and ridicule. Some labeled him a visionary, others a fraud. Despite the skepticism and the spotlight, Walton has remained remarkably consistent in his recounting of the event. Over the years, he has participated in numerous interviews, television shows, and conferences, each time retelling his extraordinary tale with minor variations, but without significant deviations. Walton's experience also led to a literary endeavor. In 1978, he published a book, The Walton Experience, providing a detailed first-hand account of his alleged abduction. The book would later serve as the basis for the 1993 film Fire in the Sky, albeit with significant dramatizations and alterations to Walton's original account. In the wake of his story, Travis began earning a living primarily through public speaking engagements, interviews, and book sales related to his abduction claims. Despite the significant changes in his life, he continues to reside in Snowflake, the place where his remarkable journey began. Even after all these years, Walton remains a highly polarizing figure. His account continues to divide opinion, provoke debate, and captivate imaginations. The lasting impact of his story is not only a testament to the enduring fascination with the possibility of extraterrestrial life, but also a reflection of the human penchant for the unexplained and the extraordinary. The Walton case, whether one views it as a genuine encounter or a fabricated tale, has undeniably left a profound imprint on our collective consciousness. It stands as a significant chapter in the annals of UFO encounters and continues to influence cultural and scientific perspectives on the topic of extraterrestrial life. Perhaps the most significant impact of the Walton case lies in its embodiment of our enduring fascination with the unknown. The story captivates us because it teeters on the boundary of the conceivable and the inconceivable, a space where our fears and hopes for what lies beyond our known world intersect. As we conclude our deep dive into the Walton case, we are left with more questions than answers. But in the quest to uncover the truth, we are reminded of our shared curiosity, our desire to explore the unexplored, and our unending quest for understanding. Whether Travis Walton truly encountered beings from another world on that fateful November night in 1975 is a question that may forever remain a mystery. But one thing is certain: his story continues to inspire, to challenge, and to make us wonder about the infinite possibilities that the universe may hold.